So the question becomes, what happens if we're asked to find the inverse trig values of angle measures that are not found on the unit circle? So for example, the previous problems, we were able to answer questions where in the yellow you see the negative 1/2 as the input, the radical 3/2, the negative radical 3/2, and negative radical 3 are values that you find on the unit circle. So you're able to match it up with an angle measure as the solution, the pi/3, the 5 pi/6, and the negative pi/3. As opposed to example 2a, you're asked to find sine of some angle measure is equal to 1/3. Well, 1/3 isn't a value you find on the unit circle, so what we do is we find an approximation of that angle measure using a calculator. So I went ahead and downloaded the scientific calculator on Desmos, but you can use your own calculator or go ahead and download the same thing. You want to make sure that you're toggled to radians, so about halfway down, or not halfway down, but towards the bottom of the screen where you see all the buttons, there's in the middle you see the radian degree where I'm switching back and forth here. I'm tapping the button. I want to make sure it's on radians before I do inverse sine of 1/3. Over on the right hand side you see the solution is 0.34 if I rounded it out to the hundredths place. You can find the inverse sine under, if you look at the far left, you have the main tab, you have the ABC tab, and then you have the function tab. So under the function tab, you would select inverse sine and enter in 1 divided by 3. To get 0.34 is the angle measure in radians. So we're going to go ahead and go back to enter in theta is equal to 0.34. Now I'd like you to find cosine of what angle is equal to 0.6, tangent of what angle is equal to 5 by entering inverse cosine and inverse tangent. Go ahead and hit pause and enter in the solutions after you've tried it. If you're having trouble with this, make sure you email me about it. Alright, so we should get 0.93 rounded out to the hundredths place and 1.37. So this should be familiar to you guys from last year. The question for this year would be, how would we find things like inverse cosecant? So let's do one of these problems. So inverse cosecant, inverse cotangent, and inverse secant are not found on the calculator. So what if they were asking us to find inverse cosecant of 5? How would we go about finding that? So this is really asking us the same thing as cosecant of what angle is equal to 5. Well, we were able to find cosecant on the calculator before by entering it in as the reciprocal function. So we're going to do a little bit of magic here as well. So cosecant goes with the sine, so it's the reciprocal of sine. So if I solve for this and I multiply sine to the other side, I get 1 equals 5 sine of theta. If I isolate sine, dividing both sides by 5, so I get sine of theta equals 1/5. Well, if you look at the beginning and at the ending, it looks like we took the reciprocal of cosecant to get sine, and then we took the reciprocal of 5 to get 1/5. So on the calculator, I would enter in inverse sine of 1/5 to figure out what the angle measure is. So let's go ahead and go back to my calculator screen. So inverse sine of 1/5. Let me backspace that. Go back to main to hit the number 5, and I get 0.20. So 0.20 is my solution. So theta equals 0.20. We would do the same thing for inverse secant and inverse cotangent.